The final battle would be fought at the heart of the galaxy itself. The Holotide had retreated to its origin point, a region of space near the galactic core where ancient stars burned with furious intensity. There, surrounded by a fleet of constructs numbering in the millions, the Nexus waited. President Park Jin-ho addressed the Combined Species Council one last time before the assault. "Our scouts have identified the Nexus's weakness," he said, his voice carrying through the chambers where representatives of all 12 Concord species and humanity sat together as equals. Its shields can be disrupted by a stellar disruption device detonated at close range. The resulting energy cascade will overload its defensive systems and leave it vulnerable to conventional weapons. "And how do we deliver this device?" asked Supreme Commander Torith. "The construct fleet will destroy any ship that approaches before it can get close enough." Admiral Choi Murray stepped forward, her uniform still bearing scorch marks from the previous battle. "We fly it in manually," she said. "A small crew and a fast ship, weaving through the enemy formation until they reach the Nexus. The constructs react to our targeting systems. They cannot predict manual piloting the same way. That is suicide." Shiz Vaughn said from her seat among the Tovani delegation. "Yes," Murray agreed. "It is." The chamber fell silent. Then a voice spoke from the back of the room. "I will do it." Vethkaran, the silvery scout who had crashed on New Horizon all those years ago, walked forward through the crowd. He was old now, his silver scales faded to gray, his movements slower than they had once been, but his eyes still held fire. "You saved my life when you had every reason to let me die," he said to the human delegates. "You showed me what courage truly looks like. Let me repay that debt." "This is not about debt," Jinho replied gently. "No," Kieran agreed. "It is about choice. For 15 years I have lived among you, learned from you, fought beside you. I am not the same person who crashed in the dead reach. You changed me. You showed me that life is not about surviving. It is about being willing to sacrifice for something greater. I understand that now." A Tovani officer stood from her seat. "I will go as well," she said. "My species helped condemn humanity to exile. Let me help earn our redemption." Then a Selvari pilot stood, then a human engineer, then more and more, from every species represented in the chamber. Volunteers rising to offer their lives for a cause that transcended their differences. Murray watched with tears in her eyes. This was what humanity had given the galaxy, not just tactics or weapons or the courage to fight. They had given them something to believe. In the mission ship was christened the Final Dawn, a small vessel packed with the stellar disruption device and crewed by volunteers from 7 different species. Kieran took the pilot's seat, his 4 hands moving across the controls with practiced ease. Beside him sat Lieutenant Yoon Hana, who had volunteered despite Marie's objections. "You do not have to do this," Kieran said as they completed the pre-flight checks. "Neither do you," Hana replied. "But here we are. The Admiral tried to stop you. The Admiral is not my mother. She does not get to make this choice for me. I have spent my whole life in exile, born on a ship, raised on a death world, fighting for survival every single day. This is my chance to make that survival mean something." Kieran nodded slowly. Captain Siren would be proud. She would tell me I was being stupid and reckless, and then she would hug me and wish me luck. That sounds about right. The Final Dawn launched alongside the main fleet, hiding in the shadow of larger vessels until they were close enough to break away. The battle around them was apocalyptic in scale. Thousands of ships from both sides exchanged fire in a storm of energy, and metal constructs fell by the hundreds. But there were always more Concord. Vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their crews dying to buy time for the mission beginning approach run. Kieran announced over the communication channel, "All crew, strap in. This is going to be rough. He pushed the engines to maximum and dove into the construct swarm. The next few minutes were a blur of impossible maneuvers, the small ship twisting and rolling through gaps that should not have existed. Dodging fire that should have been unavoidable, Kieran flew like a creature possessed, his hands dancing across the controls with inhuman precision beside him. Hannah coordinated with the crew, calling out threats and opportunities, her voice calm despite the chaos. 3 constructs converged on their position. A Tovani gunner destroyed 2 of them. The third was too close at the last second. A human crewman named Sergeant Kwan Do-hyun threw himself into the manual turret and fired point blank. The explosion destroying the construct but also tearing open the ship's hull. Do-hyun was sucked into space. His final words, a defiant shout that was lost to the void. "Sergeant Kwan is gone," Hannah reported, her voice cracking slightly. Hull breach sealed. Continuing approach. They pressed on one by one. The crew fell, each death bringing them closer to their target. A Savari engineer died repairing a critical system. A Tovani medic took a piece of shrapnel meant for Kieran, a human. Technician manually held a power connection, together with his bare hands until the electricity stopped his heart. When they finally reached the Nexus, only Kieran and Hannah remained, preparing to deliver payload. Kieran said, his voice steady despite the wounds that covered his body. "All ships, clear the blast radius." "Kieran," came Murray's voice over the communication channel. "Thank you, all of you. It has been an honor." "Admiral," he turned to Hannah. "Any last words?" She smiled, her face streaked with blood and tears. "Tell my people I died well. Tell them yourself," Kieran said. "I am activating the device." The stellar disruption device detonated against the Nexus shields for one brief moment. The heart of the galaxy burned brighter than 1,000 suns. The Nexus shields collapsed, its outer shell cracked and shattered, and deep within its core, the ancient machine consciousness that had terrorized the galaxy for so long finally died. The construct fleet went dark. Millions of machines suddenly lifeless, drifting through space like dead leaves. The holotide was over in the aftermath. The surviving fleet gathered the remains of the final dawn. There were no bodies to recover, only fragments of metal and memory. President Jinho ordered that those fragments be preserved in a memorial that would orbit the galactic core for eternity. The inscription read, "They came from exile. They died for everyone." 6 months later, the new Galactic Council was formed. For the first time in history, humanity took a seat among the elder species, not as subordinates or supplicants, but as equals who had earned their place through sacrifice and courage. The human embassy was built on the Concord's capital world, a structure that combined the elegant designs of the elder species with the practical, rugged aesthetics humanity had developed in the dead reach above its entrance. Carved in stone that would last for millennia were the words that would define humanity's legacy. "We were sent to die in the dark. We brought back the light." Governor Yoon Sirin, now in her final years, traveled from New Horizon to attend the dedication ceremony. She stood before the inscription and remembered all who had been lost, all who had fought, all who had refused to give up, even when the universe seemed determined to destroy them. "We made it," she whispered to the ghosts of her past. "We survived, we grew, we saved the galaxy." Not bad for a species of exiles. A young Selvari child approached her, guided by her parents. "Excuse me," the child said in halting human speech. "Are you really the first governor of New Horizon?" Siren smiled. "I am. My teachers say you saved my people. Even though we were mean to you first, we saved each other," Siren corrected gently. "That is what families do." The child considered this. "Are we family now?" Humans and Selvari and everyone. Siren looked out at the crowd gathered for the ceremony. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species, all united by the memory of those who had died to save them. Yes, she said. I think we finally are. The sun set on the Concord capital. A new era had begun, and somewhere among the stars, in the dead reach where it had all started, the colonies of New Horizon continued to thrive. A permanent reminder that exile was not the end of humanity's story. It was only the beginning. The combined fleet gathered at the Vara system, the last major defensive position before the Hollow Tide could reach the Concord's core territories. 800 warships from 12 species formed precise formations in the void, their elegant hulls gleaming with advanced technology developed over millennia of peaceful civilization. Among them, looking almost primitive by comparison, were 120 human vessels. Admiral Choi Mai-Rei stood on the bridge of the HDF, Relentless, flagship of the human defense fleet, watching the tactical display as the enemy approached. The Hollow Tide was not a fleet in any traditional sense. It was a swarm. Thousands upon thousands of machine constructs, ranging from small fighters to massive processing ships that could consume entire asteroids in hours. At the center of the swarm was the Nexus, a structure so large it defied comprehension. A sphere of dark metal and pulsing energy that served as the consciousness center of the entire machine collective. Admiral, the Concord's Supreme Commander, is requesting a strategy conference. Lieutenant Yunhana reported from her station. Mai-Rei recognized the name. The little girl who had asked Captain Sararin if they were going to die all those years ago was now a decorated officer in the human fleet. Put him through. The face of Supreme Commander Torth Vey appeared on the main screen. He was a Torvani, his insectoid features arranged in an expression of barely controlled anxiety. Admiral Choi, our analysts have completed their projections for the coming engagement. The results are not encouraging. I have seen the projections, Mai-Rei replied. 73% probability of total fleet destruction within the first 2 hours of combat. And yet, you seem remarkably calm, because those projections are based on Concord tactics. Your strategies rely on precise formations and coordinated fire patterns. Elegant approaches designed for wars against enemies who think like you do. The Hollow Tide does not think like you. It does not think at all in any way you can predict. Tarath's mandibles clicked in frustration. Then what do you suggest? I suggest you let us do what we do best. Cause chaos. The battle began 6 hours later. The Concord fleet opened with their standard doctrine. Concentrated fire from multiple ships targeting individual enemy constructs. It was mathematically optimal and tactically sound and completely ineffective. The Hollow Tide simply absorbed the losses and kept advancing. New constructs emerging from the processing ships, faster than the Concord could destroy them within the first 30 minutes. 12 Concord vessels were destroyed. The formation began to buckle. Supreme Commander, Toreth is calling for a tactical withdrawal. Lieutenant Yoon reported. Mai-Rei watched the display as more and more Concord ships took damage. The Hollow Tide was pressing forward relentlessly, its constructs sacrificing themselves without hesitation to clear paths for larger assault units. This was not a battle the Concord could win through conventional means. Open eye. Channel to all human vessels, she ordered. Channel open. All ships. This is Admiral Choi. Execute Protocol Fury. I repeat. Execute Protocol Fury. The human fleet broke formation. 120 vessels scattered in what appeared to be complete disorder, each ship acting independently, striking targets of opportunity, and then immediately moving to new positions. The Concord commanders watched in horror as humanity apparently abandoned all tactical coordination. What are you doing? Toreth demanded over the communication channel. This is madness. Your ships are completely exposed. Watch, Mai-Rei replied. The human strategy was not chaos. It was controlled chaos. Each captain making split-second decisions based on training and instinct rather than predetermined plans. The Holotide's tactical algorithms were designed to counter coordinated attacks. They could not predict individual human behavior, because humans themselves could not always predict it. A destroyer named the Unbroken dove directly into a formation of enemy constructs, its weapons blazing in all directions. It destroyed 17 targets before being forced to retreat with heavy damage. A frigate called the Stubborn Hope used a damaged Concorde cruiser as cover, emerging from behind the wreckage to strike at a processing ship's vulnerable fuel systems. The explosion took out an entire enemy squadron, and the Relentless, following Marie's direct commands, cut a path straight toward the center of the swarm. "Admiral, we are taking heavy fire," the helmsman reported, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Keep going. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Keep going." The bridge shook as another impact struck them. Sparks flew from damaged consoles and emergency lighting activated as primary power fluctuated. Still, they pressed forward. "Admiral," Lieutenant Yoon said quietly, "I asked Captain Siren once if we were going to die. She told me no, because humans do not give up. I believed her then, and I believe it now." Mireille looked at the young officer and nodded. "Today we prove her right." The Relentless broke through the enemy formation and emerged into the clear space near the Nexus itself for one brief moment. They had a direct line of fire at the heart of the Holotide. "All weapons, target the Nexus. Fire everything we have." The ship unleashed its full arsenal. Missiles and energy beams and kinetic projectiles all converging on the massive structure. The Nexus shields held, but barely cracks of light appeared across its surface where the impacts had nearly penetrated. Then the constructs converged on the Relentless from all directions. "All hands, brace for impact." The next few minutes were a blur of explosions and desperate maneuvering. The Relentless took hit after hit, its hull torn open in dozens of places, its weapon systems failing one by one. But they had accomplished something important. They had shown the enemy could be hurt. They had shown the Nexus was not invincible, and they had bought time for the rest of the fleet to regroup. Supreme Commander Torith, Mireille said through the static-filled communication channel, "The Nexus shields were weakened by our attack. If you concentrate fire now, you can break through." There was a long pause. "You sacrificed your flagship to create an opening for us," Torith said slowly. "You knew you would not survive. We knew it was possible we would not survive. There is a difference. Now stop talking and start shooting before our sacrifice means nothing." The Concorde fleet rallied for the first time in the war. They attacked with something approaching human aggression, their ships pressing forward despite the losses, focusing all their firepower on the damaged Nexus. The machine consciousness responded by pulling its constructs back to defend its core. The pressure on the remaining human ships decreased. "They are retreating," Lieutenant Yoon said with disbelief in her voice. "The Holotide is actually retreating." Mireille slumped back in her command chair, exhaustion washing over her. The Relentless was barely functional, drifting without power, its crew reduced by half. But they had won, not the war, not yet. But this battle, they have shown the galaxy that the Holotide could be stopped. Supreme Commander Torath's face appeared on the emergency backup screen. "Admiral Choi, I have served in the Concorde fleet for 40 years. I have never seen anything like what your people did today. You charged into certain death without hesitation." "Why?" Mireille smiled wearily. "Because some things are worth dying for. Your species forgot that a long time ago. We never did. Your losses were catastrophic." "Yes. And every single one of our fallen knew the risks. They chose to fight anyway. That is what makes us human." Torith was silent for a long moment. Perhaps the Concorde made a terrible mistake 25 years ago. He finally said, "Perhaps Exile created something we should have nurtured rather than feared. Perhaps, Murray agreed. But right now, that does not matter. The Holotide will regroup and return stronger than before. We need to be ready. How do we prepare for an enemy like that? Murray looked around at her damaged bridge, at the wounded crew who refused to stop working, at the stars beyond the broken viewports where the enemy waited. We learn from today, she said. We adapt, we get stronger, and when they come back, we hit them even harder. That is the human way. We never stop fighting. No matter how bad things get, the survivors of the battle began the long journey home, carrying with them the knowledge that victory was possible. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the galaxy had hope. 25 years had passed since the Exile, and humanity had expanded to 7 worlds scattered throughout the Dead Reach. Each colony was a testament to human determination, carved from hostile environments that would have destroyed any other species. President Park Jin-ho stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of New Horizon, surrounded by representatives from all 7 human worlds. The message they had received 3 days ago still burned in his mind. The Galactic Concord was requesting a meeting. Requesting, not demanding. The choice of words was significant. They are desperate, said Admiral Choi Mai-Rei, commander of the Human Defense Fleet, her voice sharp with barely contained contempt. The Holotide has consumed 3 of their core systems, and their precious fleets cannot stop it. Now they come to us with their tails between their legs. Desperation or not, we should hear what they have to say, replied Dr. Beek Silman, the Minister of Science. This threat affects the entire galaxy, including us, the same galaxy that tried to kill us. Mai-Rei shot back. Jin-ho raised his hand and the room fell silent. We will receive their delegation, he said calmly. Whatever happened in the past, we cannot ignore a threat that could eventually reach our own worlds. Bring them to the assembly hall. I want our people to see this. The Concord delegation arrived 2 hours later. There were 6 of them, 2 from each of the 3 most powerful species in the Concord, all dressed in formal attire that seemed designed to project authority and importance. They looked uncomfortable. Jin-ho noted with grim satisfaction. The Dead Reach was outside their experience, a hostile region they had never bothered to explore because they believed nothing of value could exist here. How wrong they had been. High Arbiter Veleth Koss was among the delegates, the same official who had pronounced humanity's exile 25 years ago. He was older now, his 4 eyes dimmer than they had been, but he still carried himself with the arrogance of someone who believed in his own superiority. President Park, Veleth said, his voice carrying the formal tones of diplomatic speech, on behalf of the Galactic Concord. I thank you for agreeing to this meeting. You mean you thank us for not shooting your ships out of the sky the moment they entered our territory? Jin-ho replied. Let us skip the pleasantries, Arbiter. We both know why you are here. The Holotide is destroying your civilization, and you want our help. Veleth's expression flickered with something that might have been shame. The situation is indeed dire, he admitted. Our fleets have engaged the Holotide on 14 separate occasions. We have lost every battle. Our strategies and tactics are ineffective against an enemy that does not fear death, does not negotiate, does not retreat. And you believe humans can succeed where you have failed. We believe that your species possesses certain qualities that may prove useful in this conflict. Admiral Mai-Rei laughed bitterly. Certain qualities, she repeated. You mean the instability and aggression you cited when you exiled us? The genetic unpredictability that made us too dangerous to live among civilized species. Veleth had no response to that. Another delegate, a Torvani female named Shizis Vorn, stepped forward. What was done to your people was wrong, she said. I was young when the vote was taken, but I have studied the records since then. There was no justification for exile. It was an act of fear disguised as wisdom. And fear has no place in justice. The assembly hall fell silent. This was the first time any Concord representative had ever admitted wrongdoing. Jinho studied Shiza's carefully. She seemed sincere, her compound eyes meeting his gaze without flinching. "Your admission is appreciated," he said finally. "But words alone cannot undo 25 years of hardship. My people built a civilization from nothing, while yours enjoyed the comforts of protected space. We survived earthquakes and radiation storms and disease outbreaks that killed thousands. We mourned our dead and buried them in alien soil because you decided we were too dangerous to live among you." "I know," Shiza replied. "And I know that asking for your help now must seem like the cruelest irony. But the Holotide does not care about politics or history or old grievances. It will consume everything, your worlds included. If it is not stopped." Jinho rose from his chair and walked toward the delegation. Every human in the room watched him. Waiting for his decision, he stopped directly in front of Velith Kos. "You called us unstable," he said quietly. "Dangerous, unpredictable. Perhaps you were right. But those qualities that frightened you are exactly what you need now. Your species evolved on paradise worlds, where conflict was rare and violence was unnecessary. You have forgotten what it means to fight for survival." "We never forgot." He turned to address the entire assembly. "The Holotide is a threat to all life in this galaxy, human and Concord alike. We cannot ignore it simply because those who ask for help were once our enemies. That is not who we are. That is not who we have ever been." He faced the delegation again. "We will help you fight this war. But not as servants or subordinates. We will fight as equals or not at all. Humanity will take its place at the table as a full member of any coalition formed against the Holotide. Our admirals will command alongside yours. Our strategies will be given equal weight, and when this war is over, the exile will be officially ended." Velith's eyes widened. "The Council will never agree to such terms. Then the Council will die," Jinho said simply. "Those are our conditions. Take them back to your leaders and let them decide how much their survival is worth." The delegation departed 3 days later, carrying humanity's terms back to Concord space. For 2 weeks, there was no response. During that time, reports came in of 2 more Concord systems falling to the Holotide. The machine consciousness was advancing faster than anyone had predicted, consuming worlds with terrifying efficiency. Finally, the answer came. The Concord accepted all terms humanity would join the war as equals. Admiral Myray immediately began coordinating with Concord military commanders, sharing intelligence and developing joint strategies. Human ships, built from the harsh metals of the Dead Reach and designed for survival in the most hostile conditions imaginable, were prepared for combat. They were not elegant like Concord vessels, all smooth lines and advanced technology. They were angular and heavily armored, designed to take punishment and keep fighting. They were built by a species that had learned to never give up. President Jinho addressed the combined human population via broadcast. "For 25 years, we have lived in exile," he said. "We have fought against a hostile universe and we have won. Now we face a new challenge. An enemy that threatens not just us, but every living being in the galaxy. The Concord sent us to die in the darkness. Instead, we built an empire. Now we will use that strength to save the very civilization that tried to destroy us." He paused and let his words sink in. "Some will ask why we should help those who hurt us. The answer is simple. Because we can, because it is right. Because showing mercy to our enemies is what separates us from the monsters we fight. The Holotide knows only consumption and destruction. We will show the galaxy something different. We will show them what humanity truly is. Across 7 worlds, 2 million humans prepared for warships launched from hidden dockyard. Soldiers checked their weapons and said goodbye to their families. Scientists worked around the clock on new technologies that might give them an edge against the machine. Consciousness, and in the depths of space, the Holotide continued its advance, unaware that it was about to face an enemy unlike any it had encountered before, an enemy that had been forged in exile and tempered by 25 years of suffering, an enemy that had every reason to let the galaxy burn, but chose instead to save it. The war for survival was about to begin. The chamber fell silent as the final vote appeared on the massive display screen that hung above the 12 representatives of the Galactic Concord. Unanimous Captain Yoon Siren stood in the center of the room with her hands clasped behind her back and her spine straight as steel, though her heart felt like it was being crushed inside her chest. "The decision is final," announced High Arbiter Velith Kos, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he read from the official decree. "Humanity is hereby exiled from all territories under Concord protection. Effective immediately, you are granted 1 vessel and supplies for 6 standard cycles. You will travel to the Dead Reach, and you will not return." Siren wanted to scream at them, wanted to demand justice, wanted to ask how they could condemn 50,000 innocent people for the actions of a few. But she knew it would change nothing. The Selvari representative avoided her gaze, his silver scales rippling with what might have been shame. The Tovani delegate stared at her with cold satisfaction in her compound eyes. The others simply looked relieved that the problem was being solved. "You call this mercy," Siren said, her voice steady despite the rage burning inside her. "You sent us to a region where no ship has survived more than 3 cycles, and you call it mercy. We could have chosen extermination." Velith replied without emotion. "Many on this council argued for exactly that. Be grateful for what you have been given." "Captain." Siren turned and walked out of the chamber without another word. There was nothing left to say. The persistent Dawn was not a warship or an exploration vessel or a colony transport. It was all 3 combined into one desperate package, built in secret over 5 years, while humanity negotiated for peace. They had known this day might come. They had prepared as best they could. Siren walked through the corridors of her ship and looked at the faces of her people. Families with children, scientists, engineers, farmers, soldiers, teachers, artists, doctors, 50,000 lives depending on her to find them a future in a place designed to kill them. Chief Engineer Big Jung-ho fell into step beside her. "Systems are ready," he said quietly. "We can launch within the hour." "Good. The children are scared." Siren. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Jung-ho had been her friend since childhood, one of the few people who still called her by her first name. "I know," she said. "I am scared too, but we cannot let them see it. We have to be strong enough for everyone." He nodded and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever is out there, we will face it together." The launch was quiet. No crowds gathered to watch them leave because humanity had no friends left in Concord space. The only witness was the cold emptiness of the void as the persistent Dawn engaged its engines and began the long journey toward exile. Siren sat in the command chair and watched the stars slide past on the view screen behind them. The lights of Concord stations grew smaller and smaller until they vanished entirely. Ahead lay only darkness. Incoming transmission. Lieutenant Park Yoonji announced from the communications station, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Put it through." The face of High Arbiter Velith appeared on screen, his expression as cold and distant as ever. "This is the final official communication between the Galactic Concord and the human species," he said. "You have been granted mercy. Do not return. The Concord will consider any human vessel in protected space an act of war. May whatever gods you worship guide you to peace." The transmission ended. "Mercy," Junho muttered from his station. "They keep using that word. Forget them," Siren said. They are no longer our concern. Our only focus now is survival. The first 3 weeks of travel were relatively peaceful. They passed through the outer territories, where Concord patrols were sparse and the few ships they encountered gave them a wide berth. Word had spread quickly about humanity's exile. No one wanted to be associated with the condemned species. Then they entered the Dead Reach, and everything changed. The first sign of trouble was a radiation spike that forced them to reroute around a dying star. The second was a micrometeorite storm that damaged 3 hull sections and killed 4 crew members. The third was an engine failure that left them drifting for 6 days while Junho and his team worked around the clock to restore power. Siren barely slept during those 6 days. She walked the corridors at all hours, checking on families, speaking with engineers, making sure that hope did not die even as their situation grew more desperate. On the 5th day, a little girl named Yoon Hana found her sitting alone in an observation deck, staring out at the hostile stars. "Are we going to die?" the girl asked with the brutal honesty of childhood. Siren looked at her for a long moment. "No," she said finally. "We are not going to die. Do you know why?" Hana shook her head. "Because we are human. Because our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that should have destroyed them. Because giving up is not in our nature, never has been. Never will be." The girl considered this seriously. "Okay," she said. "I believe you." She wandered off to find her parents, and Siren returned to staring at the void, wondering if the words she had spoken were truth or just desperate lies. On the 6th day, the engines came back online. On the 7th day, they found the planet. It appeared on their sensors like a rough jewel hiding in the darkness. A world of violent storms inactive, volcanoes and radiation levels that would have sent any Concord species running in the opposite direction. Lieutenant Park ran the analysis 3 times before reporting her findings. "Breathable atmosphere," she said with disbelief in her voice. "Liquid water, organic compounds in the soil. Gravity at 1.1 standard. It is harsh, Captain, incredibly harsh. But it is livable." Junho pulled up the geological data. Earthquake activity is constant. Radiation storms hit the surface every few days. The temperature swings are extreme. This place will try to kill us every single moment we are there. Siren studied the readouts and a strange smile crossed her face. "It is perfect," she said. The bridge crew stared at her. "Captain," Junho said carefully, "did you hear what I just said? This world is actively hostile to life." "Yes. And that is exactly why we will survive here. The Concord sent us to the Dead Reach because they believed nothing could live in these conditions. They forgot one crucial detail." She stood and walked closer to the view screen, where the angry red and brown planet filled the display. Earth was a death world too. Predators everywhere. Natural disasters. Diseases, climate shifts, everything trying to kill us at every moment. And we did not just survive. We thrived. We conquered. We spread across every corner of that world, and then we reached for the stars. She turned to face her crew. The Concord species evolved on paradise worlds, where the environment was gentle and forgiving. They have forgotten what it means to struggle, to fight for every breath. We never forgot. This planet thinks it can break us. We will prove it wrong. Junho looked at the data again and slowly nodded. "We will need to establish underground shelters first, develop radiation shielding, create sustainable food production systems. Then let us get started." The persistent dawn descended through the turbulent atmosphere of their new home, while lightning storms raged around them and the hull groaned under the strain. When they finally touched down on the rocky surface, Siren was the first to step outside. The wind howled and tore at her protective suit. The ground trembled beneath Her feet, the sky above, was the color of blood and fire. She smiled. "Welcome home," she whispered to herself. "Let the galaxy forget about us. Let them believe we died out here in the darkness. Someday they will learn the truth. Someday they will understand that exile was not our end. It was our beginning." Behind her, the doors of the ship opened and 50,000 humans began their new lives on a world that wanted them dead. They would survive. They would grow. They would become something the galaxy had never seen before. The Concorde had made a terrible mistake, and one day they would realize it, but that day was still far in the future. For now, there was only the work of survival, and the humans of the persistent dawn were ready to begin. 15 years had passed since the exile, and the colony of New Horizon had grown beyond anything the Galactic Concorde could have predicted. 200,000 humans now called this harsh world home, living in underground cities carved from rock and reinforced with metals extracted from the planet itself. They had built farms and pressurized domes and factories that never stopped, producing in schools where children learned both the history of Earth and the skills needed to survive in their new reality. Governor Yoon Siren stood at the observation window of the Central Administration Building, watching as construction crews worked on the newest expansion to their settlement. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray and her face lined with years of struggle. But her eyes still held the same fire that had carried her people through the darkest days. Her aide, a young man named Cho Taeson, approached with a tablet in his hands. "Governor, our long-range sensors have detected something unusual." "Define unusual." "A vessel, unknown design, entering our system at high speed. The trajectory suggests it is damaged and out of control." Siren turned from the window. "Concorde. Negative. The configuration does not match any Concorde species we have on record. It appears to be Selvari, but the markings are different. Possibly military." The Selvari were one of the 12 species that had voted for humanity's exile, but Siren had never held personal hatred for them. The vote had been unanimous after all. Blame belonged to the entire Concorde, not any single race. "Prepare a rescue team," she ordered. "If there are survivors, bring them here." Taeson hesitated. "Governor, some of the council members will object." The Selvari were among those who— "I know exactly what they were among," Siren interrupted. "And I do not care. Whoever is on that ship is in trouble, and we will help them. That is who we are. That is who we choose to be." "Understood." "Yes, Governor." The rescue team found the ship crashed in a valley 300 kilometers from New Horizon. The vessel was badly damaged, its hull torn open in multiple places, and its engines completely destroyed. Inside they found a single survivor, a Selvari male with deep wounds across his chest and silver scales that had turned gray from blood loss. They brought him back to the colony, and the medical team worked through the night to save his life. When he finally woke 3 days later, Siren was waiting in his room. The Selvari stared at her with wide eyes, his four-fingered hands gripping the bed sheets. "Human," he said, his voice rough and filled with confusion. "That is impossible. Humans are extinct. Reports of our death were greatly exaggerated." Siren replied with a thin smile. "I am Governor Yoon Siren. You are in our medical facility on New Horizon. You crashed in our territory, and we saved your life. What is your name?" The Selvari was silent for a long moment. "Processing this information, Veth Karen," he finally said. "Scout Commander, Selvari Defense Fleet." "Or what remains of it?" "What do you mean? What remains of it?" Kiran closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Siren saw something she had not expected to see in the face of one of the elder species. Fear, pure and absolute fear. "They are coming," he said. "The Holotide. We thought they were just stories. Legends from before the Concorde was formed. But they are real, and they are consuming everything in their path. He explained what he knew. The Holotide was a machine consciousness, ancient beyond measure, that had awakened at the edge of the galaxy. It did not communicate or negotiate or show mercy. It simply consumed, absorbing technology and resources and leaving only dead worlds behind. The Selvari had been the first to encounter it when one of their border colonies went silent. Then a second colony fell, then a third. I was sent to scout the outer territories, Kieran said, to find help, to warn anyone who would listen. But the Concorde refuses to acknowledge the threat. They believe their fleets can handle anything. They have forgotten what true danger looks like, and they have forgotten about us, Siren added. Yes. The Concorde does not even know you survived. They believed the dead reach would kill you within a year. Siren leaned back in her chair. We are harder to kill than they thought. Over the following weeks, Kieran recovered under the care of human doctors who treated him with the same dedication they would have given one of their own. He watched in amazement as humans went about their daily lives on a world that should have been impossible to colonize. He saw children playing in the underground parks. He saw scientists developing new technologies to better harness the planet's geothermal energy. He saw soldiers training with weapons and tactics that the Concorde had never imagined. I do not understand, he said to Siren one evening, as they shared a meal in her private quarters. The Concorde exiled you, condemned you to death, sent you to the most hostile region of space known to exist. Why did you save me? Why are you feeding me? Why have you not demanded revenge? Siren set down her utensils and looked at him seriously. Because hatred is a luxury we cannot afford, she said. We've spent 15 years fighting for survival against a planet that tries to kill us every day. We have lost friends and family and entire sections of our colony to earthquakes and radiation storms and equipment failures. Through all of that, we learned something important. What? That the universe is already cruel enough without us adding to it. Revenge would not bring back our dead. Hatred would not make our lives easier. All it would do is poison us from the inside. We chose a different path. We chose to remember what makes us human. Kieran was silent for a long time. The Concorde species have forgotten how to be anything other than comfortable. He finally said, We have had peace for so long that we do not know how to face a real threat. The Holotide will destroy us, and we are too proud to admit that we need help. Then perhaps it is time someone reminded you what strength looks like. When Kieran's wounds had fully healed, the humans repaired his ship using their own technology. It was not elegant work. The human modifications were rough and practical compared to Selvari engineering. But it was solid. The ship would fly again on the day of his departure. Kieran stood before Siren and a crowd of humans who had gathered to see him off. I will tell them, he said. I will tell the Concorde that humanity survived. That you built something incredible out here in the darkness. That you showed mercy to a representative of those who condemned you. Tell them whatever you wish, Siren replied. But tell them this as well. The Holotide is coming, and when it arrives, the old ways will not save them. They will need to learn how to fight or they will die. And fighting is something humans have never forgotten how to do. Kieran nodded and climbed into his vessel. The humans watched as it rose into the blood-red sky and vanished into the darkness beyond Governor Park, Jino. Siren's successor, who had been appointed 3 years prior, stepped up beside her. Do you think he will deliver our message? He will try. And if the Concorde still refuses to listen? Siren looked at the empty sky, where Kieran's ship had disappeared. Then we will be ready when they finally come begging for help. Because they will come sooner or later. The proud always do. 3 months later, their long-range sensors detected a fleet of Concorde vessels entering the dead reach. Kieran's transmission had been intercepted and the Concorde had learned two pieces of information that would change the course of galactic history. First, humanity had survived. Second, something far worse was coming. The galaxy would never be the same again.